Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Sorry I'm going to talk a little quiet because people in my house are asleep still. But we're going to talk about some class things in Three Houses, and specifically we're going to be talking about movement penalty. Something that I haven't really considered as much as I wish I would have up until now. It really balances some classes out, and I wish Three Houses would have taken more advantage of having more varied terrain than it does. And I feel like specifically if they would have made some movement options less powerful, it could have led to some fun and interesting balance options. And it takes some classes that I think are really lackluster and makes them, it gives them a niche at the very least, and gives you a reason to certify into them just in case you need to for some reason. Alright, so I have it listed on the screen here. This is from fe3h.com, really great website for your Fire Emblem Three Houses knowledge needs. They have stuff on like everything. It's great stuff, man. But here it just lists the different movement penalty classes. And I was like sort of aware that this existed, but I didn't really know some of the units that were in the different kind of movement penalty classes. And I don't know if these are like official names. Some of them definitely are like Cavalry, Flyers, and Infantry, but I'm pretty sure Thief, like, and Mage, like, it's just something they made up. I could be wrong, or maybe it's in the game's files or something. But see here we have Flyers, which they don't have penalties ever. They never have movement penalties, they can just go anywhere. Cavalry, they have high movement, but they tend to have like the most penalties. Unless we're talking like... yeah, generally they just have like the most penalties, we'll just say it like that. Mage, like they say, which is just all the magic using classes, except for like dismounted Dark Knights and dismounted classes like that. Those are considered infantry, which is interesting. Then we have Thief-like, which are, you know, Thief, Brawler, Assassin, Grappler, Trickster, and I think this is the one that's most interesting to me and the one I want to talk about the most. And then Infantry, which is just everything else, right? And then we have everything listed here that we need to know here. Have the different kind of terrains, and then the movement penalty. When it's a movement penalty, that's how much movement it takes to move through that space. So the way you can look at it is a unit's movement is kind of like a currency that you have to spend. So if you have an armor knight who has 4 move, and there is, say, their infantry, right here, say they have to move through a forest or thicket, they can move 3 spaces total if it's 1 forest and thicket, right? So you have to spend 2 of your spaces to go through a forest or move into a forest space, and then you'd have 2 left over to use on like regular floor or anything else that you want to move through. So if you're trying to move through 2 forest spaces, the most you can do is 2 spaces at a time, right? So it's a kind of currency, and that's how movement, it's an easy way to like think of movement, to treat it that way, to really understand this concept of movement penalty through different terrain. So like infantry kind of works the way I would think it would, and so does cavalry. You know, they have the highest movement in the game, cavalry units do. But you know, they have a hard time moving through forests and stronghold and stairs, and stronghold is like the forts, right, and stuff like that. So it reduces them to, say you have to move through a forest or thicket, will reduce like cavaliers to like 2 move, right? So that's something to consider for that. But what I find most interesting is this one, which is the thief-like category. So in general, I think in certain circumstances, the classes in Thief-like are generally just like inferior to other classes in the same tier that do similar things. So for instance, you have Mercenary, which is in infantry class, but then of course Thief is in Thief-like. So Thief-like, if you look through here, has almost no penalty. The only penalty they ever have for movement is through water and through sand. So they can move really just through forests and stuff really easily, and they tend to have high movement too. Especially once you get into like Assassin has higher movement than other classes. So Mercenary generally has like better stats in my opinion. I like the extra strength that it gets and the extra HP that it gets compared to Thief. I mean, he does lose out on a couple points of speed, but it makes for an interesting case with Thief, because they have no terrain penalties except in like extreme cases with water and sand, which you don't see very often. So they can move all over the map freely, and it's something also to consider when you're fighting against the scary past thieves on maddening difficulty. But regardless, I think that's an interesting way of balancing these two classes, where generally one is seen as better because of stat spread, and also just because the mastery skill is generally seen as better as well. It's hard, and they have the exact same prerequisites. It's hard to say which one. It's hard to make a differentiation to say, oh, I will go into Thief, except for maybe you need to steal or something. But the big thing is their movement is different, right? I think it's really, really interesting topic. Same goes for like Brigand and Brawler. I know Brigand and Brawler don't actually use the same weapon types as far as certifying into them. But Brigand just has like the far superior, like by miles, has the better master ability. Death Blow is just always going to be better than unarmed combat. Like generally, I don't know. There might be some niche instances that someone could bring up, but I can't think of any. I'd always rather have Death Blow. So, and Death Blow just makes your gauntlets even more powerful because that's plus 12 damage with a gauntlet instead of plus 6. It's insane. So, but Brawlers are in the Thief-like category, so they can move freely through forests and forts and stairs and wastes and swamp and whatever else. So it makes them have a special niche there. So I still think Brigand is just like the better class to spend time in than Brawler, but that is an interesting way to like kind of balance classes in Three Houses, and I wish they would have like gone even further with it personally. I want to go look at one last example, and this is between Assassin and Hero and Swordmaster. Like these three are all like somewhat similar. Whether you they all basically are sword-based classes, right? Because they all have Swordfare, and in particular, I think Hero is seen as kind of like the weakest because it's just like swords and axes is just kind of a weird combo. There's not very many classes that ask for that or have that as a requirement ever. That's the only one actually. So I see why people think it's not that like great to go into, but like base vantage is nice, Swordfare is great, but you can get that elsewhere. Swordmaster I think is the one that most people gravitate towards. Has a really great stat spread, and Swordfare and Sword Crit are both great for class abilities. The master abilities, whatever, but it's better than what Assassin has. I think Hero of these three has the best master ability, by the way. Assassin, I think, is the second most often picked of these three. And that's just because it doesn't have quite the stats that Swordmaster has. It loses out on some strength, and it also doesn't get Sword Crit, which is funny. You think Assassin would have like Sword Crit as well, or over Swordmaster, but it does have Stealth, which has some things. But the big difference, again, is terrain. Their Assassins are Thief-likes, and plus they have an extra point of movement. It just makes them such a good pick for maps that have high amounts of forest or forts or anything that's going to slow you down. It makes them very versatile, and then plus their stealth skill, which means if they are they won't get targeted as often if you have other player units in range of enemies. Just makes their high movement even more useful. And yeah, so I don't know. That's just some food for thought, things I've been thinking about recently when it comes to the higher movement. Like movement options, and also just like certain classes that I feel are honestly kind of bad, and I wanted to see what redeeming qualities they have, and I think Brawler definitely falls in that, and Thief as well. Like they have really great movement options through terrain and stuff, so I think it's kind of a cool thought and things I haven't really considered up until recently. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe for more Fire Emblem discussions like this. We also are going to be playing our Three Houses Chat Sabotage starting around 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific time tonight. It's going to be a blast and a half. I always have a good time. And come make me suffer, make me lose and stuff. And yeah, like the video, comment your thoughts, and I'll talk to you later.